I've thought a lot. This might be like the weirdest thought, especially to jump into the podcast in. But humans are unique um, because we're not like ants are like literally a hive mind, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like you said, there it's just like whatever I'm told to do from the pheromones of whoever, and you're just like a little worker bot. What's interesting about humans is we're not, yet we achieve similar things to things that are. You know what I mean? Like take like every other primate, they're not like building highway systems. And if you look at the things that are building stuff similar to a highway system, it's all like honeybees and ants
Yeah.
and
Pheromone
stuff like
based.
that. So it's yeah. But I think that's crazy that we can be cooperative on a level that in nature seems to require like literal hive mind mentality.
Yeah.
And we just do it willingly. I think that's pretty remarkable.
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag because
Semi willingly.
oftentimes we're not doing it willingly.
True, true, true,
That's been there's a long history of not doing it willingly. I hope we get to the point where 100% we're doing everything willingly and like we don't have to worry about like,
true, true.
you know, money, and we could just all focus on making the world better and making our species better and progressing things in a healthy way. So maybe in 1,000
Yeah,
years we'll get there.
maybe. Yeah, yeah. Maybe when we have like the whatever they had in Star Trek, where they could like push a button and it would make food.
Oh yeah, little ham
That's
sandwich comes out. That'd be sick.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, let's work on that. Let's divert all the 00 energy to to make that.
yeah. No problem. the building an email client hasn't proved hard enough.
Listen, hold on. That's
I should
step
make
one.
that.
Okay, how about that? This is step one. Email client
Yeah.
one. The ham sandwich microwave machine in Star Trek is phase two.
But okay, so I did have a mission for today. I was going to teach you basically all the ways that you personally are getting fucked by by big tech.
Oh hell
Um,
yeah! I'm ready to hear.
I
I
feel
just
like
had my
that's
coffee. I'm prepared
awesome,
to. I'm prepared to be depressed.
awesome. Yeah, I hope I don't make you depressed. Like maybe I'll make you hopeful for the future, but
Okay,
you'll be a little depressed because we for sure could have already like this definitely should have been how it was already done.
you got to break me down before you can build me up again.
True, true. So yeah, I think like the topic of the podcast should be like ways tech is failing various industries, and it obviously makes sense to start with the one you're in.
And what one am
So
I
yeah,
in? You can tell by my shirt. Oh, you can't see my shirt on the podcast, but
you're
I'm
an
wearing.
accountant, right?
Yeah, I'm a count. Yeah, I'm in the film, TV, video industry, moving more and more to video and social media because that's where all the eyes are going.
Wild how much it's changed just in your career, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was kind of ahead of it a little bit because I got my start in the East Coast. Like I started working in film and TV and stuff in Boston, and I moved to LA to try to pursue it. And when I got here, it's super saturated with other workers that are looking for the same gigs. If there's one gig,
Right.
there's 1,000 people trying to get it. And then you could just, if you're the employer, you could just be like, oh, hey, that guy's the best. Let me just grab that one. And then the
Right.
other 999 people are like, shit, I missed the job.
Yeah.
So I originally got started in content because there's just a lot more content going on. And I started working with YouTubers, editing for them, and then doing like social content from like big brands that they have a TV show or something, but they also have a social media feed and they have their own app and things like that. So I would be doing, edits for them in that space. So I've already kind of been here,
Yeah, that's
but now
wild.
it's
It's brought you back, but for like a different reason now. At first it was
yeah,
like, I guess I'll do this. And
yeah,
then now it's like, oh shit, this is where it's at.
yeah. But the trick is there's still not much money in it, and now more and more people from my industry are not getting work right now, especially in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So everyone else is starting to catch up to the idea that like, oh, okay, it's social now. Like
Netflix.
Netflix,
Yeah.
yeah, Netflix has officially been surpassed by YouTube. It's now the biggest streaming platform.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
but
wild.
one of the reasons there's two reasons it gets so big. One, it's people like we're gonna have like a period of art where we're like looking at each other,
Yeah.
and watching each other do things and create. YouTube is really good for that. And two, YouTube got so big because it's owned by Google and all the labor is almost free. So they're just exploiting everybody who builds YouTube channels. It's just like imagine if someone built you a TV show. You can imagine the budget on a TV show that had like 1 million viewers, right?
Right.
YouTube is not paying like
Yeah.
anything for that. So
Right.
even if they are paying like via their a cut of the ad revenue, it's still like, I don't know, 0.3% of like what a budget would be for a TV show that they're spending on similar numbers
Yeah.
sometimes. It's wild.
Well, and that's not how like accountants see money either. Like when you spend money to make a TV show, that's very different than cutting profit on something you hadn't spent any money up front. You know what I mean? Like when you just give someone ad revenue, that's you didn't invest anything.
So they have the biggest, like,
So
all of social media has like the biggest unpaid free volunteer
right.
labor force in the world. That's why they're all
Yeah.
like, that's why they're all super billionaires, because they're just stealing
Yeah.
all of our labor value.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was about to say you said there's no money in it. Like no, there's more money than ever. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
not it's
It's
not
not going to
going to
us.
any of the
Yeah,
creators.
it's going to like
Yeah.
a handful of people. All right.
So that's a good
So how is tech screwing me?
yeah.
Let me know.
Yeah, let me explain exactly how that's happening to you now. The first question, we talked about this briefly on Twitter, and it showed me you actually might not know this, so it's good. Do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. What podcast app do you use?
Apple Podcasts, number one.
Okay, cool. I think that's what most people use. They kind of like invented podcasting. Are you familiar that there's apps like Pocket Casts and there's like third party apps you could download? Okay. So that's what's crazy. Because you've asked this about YouTube before. You're like, how could we make an app where you can scroll through and you can watch YouTube or you can watch TikTok or an Instagram reel or something?
Oh, like
And
a combined service where I can see,
right.
I have a feed that has a YouTube and a TikTok and an Instagram, and I could see different creators
Yeah.
across platforms. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that you asked that because in a way, podcasts are already that.
Mm.
They're just very specific to audio files, right? So it can't be like a text post and it can't be a video, but that's just because when the podcast spec was agreed on, it was to make audio recordings, but you could do that with anything. So basically, to get back on track, you could download this app called Pocket Casts, and that's made by an independent developer who has a podcast themselves. It's a really good app if anyone listening wants to check it out. But what's interesting about that is you'll see all of the same podcasts on Pocket Casts that you would on Apple Podcasts or whatever. And that's because podcasts use, they call it a specification. It's basically just an agreed upon file format. An easy way to explain this, like to someone that doesn't know much, is like, you know how if you visit a website in Chrome or you look at it on Safari on your phone or you look at it in Firefox, it basically looks the same. There might be minor changes, but for
Sure.
the most part, it's the same website. That's because HTML and CSS, what you make and style a website with, are agreed upon standards. And when Apple decided to get into the podcast game, they made podcasts get driven off of RSS feeds with a certain standard, which was a really cool thing for Apple to do, honestly, and kind of un-Apple like. So basically, what that means is you're not familiar with RSS either, right?
No, I've heard the term, but I
Okay.
don't know what that means.
Okay. Good. So like tech nerds were big on RSS for a while, and it means real simple syndication, which like I'm sure syndication is used in like radio and stuff, right? That word.
Yeah, it's like it's like a way to distribute media.
Yeah. Okay. And RSS was built for blogs. So it was basically like you could have an RSS feed attached to your blog, and then someone could download an RSS reader and subscribe to your feed, which is basically just putting a URL into your reader because all this stuff is served over the web the way a website is. And then when you open up your RSS browser, whether that's like an app or it could be a website or whatever, you would have things from different blogs turned into a feed that's chronological, basically. And you might start to see where I'm going with this, which is like that is obviously the early inspiration for all of the timelines on social media, which is why they all started chronologically.
Mm.
You might start to ask yourself if if early on in the internet we decided to do this with blogs and then Apple expanded the same spec that was already there to support doing that with podcasts, how the hell did we not land on something similar for video?
Just to recap, so I understand. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to
No.
make sure I get it. So with early podcasts, audio files, and you're saying it's still this way today, right? There's
Yeah.
like you upload your episode to what's called an RSS. Uh, like, where does it upload? So RSS. Let's take a step back. So is RSS a format, or what
Yes.
is? Okay. So you uh, do you export as RSS if you're editing a podcast? Do you or you export as like an MP4 file, and you how do you so
Yeah.
explain that part?
So that's a good question. And that leads to if you used a podcast or if you've made a podcast, and this one will have to contend with this, you'll have to figure out how you want to host it. And you'll make this podcast and you'll export an MP4 or any other audio format that is like widely accepted, probably works. I don't know like the nitty gritties of it, but when you're editing the podcast, you'll just export it however you would be used to.
Okay.
It would be up to the host. You would then upload that file somewhere
Mm-hmm.
and you'd enter some metadata like a title, a description, maybe
Sure.
the author. I don't know how many fields are accepted on a podcast. There's probably tags.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So there's like an agreed upon spec of like things you can add that are extra data that's attached to a podcast. And your host will take that file and this data and it'll spit it out into an RSS feed format.
Gotcha.
And here's the thing, if you're like very tech inclined, like most people just pay a podcast host, which is a totally fine thing. It's good that stuff is made accessible to normal people. But it's also very good that if you know how to make an RSS feed and you know how to host stuff on your own servers, like you can just be your own podcast host. You don't need to
Okay.
pay someone to be a specialized podcast host.
So you make your podcast, export it, you upload it to what's called RSS, and then that
Essentially,
RSS
yeah.
distributes it to all these different, or allows distributors to access your feed. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Which way is it?
It's that,
Are
yeah.
you distributing out, or are they accessing your host
They're
where it's
accessing
hosted?
your host.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, what you would do, most podcast services will automate this part too, but after you have your RSS feed, you'll go to like iTunes and you'll register your podcast. You'll give them the URL
I
where
see.
your stuff is hosted.
Got it. So they're
And
just
you're like,
all
this is
these
the
like
name of my podcast.
Apple Podcasts, iTunes, all these other services are just like tapping into your feed that you give them a code for, essentially. And it's kind of is it an automated process at this point for those big guys?
Yeah, yeah. And they'll even like it's so automated at this point. I think if you have a podcast and you don't even notify, like let's say you put your podcast on iTunes, but you don't apply to be on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Spotify eventually finds you if you're big enough. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
They're going to figure out how to get your podcast in their feed too.
Interesting. So they're tapping into your feed, putting it on their service. Now, do they pay you for that?
No.
So they just tap in,
which is interesting.
Like, can I get like a piece of that? And I'll like your content will elevate my brand and get listeners to come in to my ecosystem by just tapping into you without permission.
I'm pretty sure you have the rights to be like, you can't serve my podcast.
Okay.
And certainly, if you're hosting your own, you could just block their IP ranges or do all sorts of stuff.
I'm sure the benefit of being on Spotify is greater than denying Spotify.
Exactly. And I think most people see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's interesting. Compare that, like on YouTube, you go on YouTube and you upload your video to YouTube. And if you don't save that a copy on your computer, later you're going to have to download it from YouTube and hope that they've, not compressed it to hell or whatever. Compare that to if you run a podcast, you pick one of hundreds of podcast hosts. You compete on price. You find the one that has the features you care about. Maybe your podcast host starts putting in a bunch of AI tools and you're like, fuck this. You go to another one that doesn't do that. There's no option like that for YouTube. You can switch to TikTok, but then you're in TikTok land. Like you haven't escaped the broken ownership model that these video platforms have invented.
For me, when I upload content to those channels, so I'm a video creator, I have to think about reformatting every single time and think about distribution 5 different times. Think about how I want to market 5 different times to get on all these platforms. Because for me, it's like I see the most benefit when I'm on every single platform in every single format. So
Right.
often, like the challenge for me is like, okay, I made a video. Now I got to think about it 5 different ways in order to reach an audience on each one because they all have different audiences and different
Yeah.
ways that the algorithms work, people interact. So it ends up being like you're not building for one distribution like you would a podcast. You're building for five.
Right. And it's five now. Like tomorrow, something else comes out, and it's like,
Hmm.
we want, it's not vertical video, but it is only 7 seconds.
Yeah,
And now you've got this whole, you're like,
we're
okay,
doing diagonal video now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Now I'm doing, yeah. Uh, and you have to change everything for that. Where like you could imagine it, let's like go into an imaginary world where videos, YouTube, instead of doing what it did, it was like it looked at podcasts and it was like, how do we do that for video? If that world progressed and we're in it now, you could easily see where you make a video and maybe you do cut it in 3 different ways still because you need like a vertical format that's short and you need a long form format. You could host it yourself or at a host you pay for. And when a new short form video service comes out, it can just scrape everyone's RSS feed for their short form tag and start showing the short videos. And like you said, like a lot of that could be permissionless. I think in a weird way, it works best when the internet is free and just open to be like, hey, I see your content. I want to remix it and show it in a different way. So I like that. But there's something I touched on this before when I was talking about blocking IP ranges and stuff. If you own the host, you you control the content entirely. You control who has access to it and who doesn't. You can put ads in front of it. You can bury ads inside of it, and they can't do anything to stop that. Like they're pulling your audio file. If you've put ads in it, there's ads in it now. You could use like AI to try and find that stuff and whatever, but then you could argue that platform's providing its own value, and maybe there's something to that. It's just a shame, I guess. The moral of the story is like there's this proven format out there, and podcasts are arguably just as big as video. Like everybody's listening to them.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, it's been a huge success. We've proven it works. And I guess what makes me the most angry about this is like there's so few people like me sitting down explaining to people that aren't huge in tech to be like, there are other ways and we know about them and we know how to do them and it wouldn't even take that much work, but nobody's interested in it because it's a way to give freedom to creators, and that's not what tech's about right now.
Let's pause
Because yeah, the
there.
money.
Let's
Okay.
pause there because we're about to lose the feed.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is I want to let's take a little break. I think it'll take like 10 minutes or something. I want to get
Okay.
that answer again, um, explaining to me the content creator
Okay.
how why RSS feed is better, this system
Okay.
that system as opposed to the video system, and
Okay.
why they do it this way. Is it like is it so they can what's the phrase? Is it like a competition thing? They want to lock out competition so they don't make it as easy as like an RSS feed or the other tech blocks. Like is it impossible compared to RSS? So
Those
that's
are
what I'm,
good questions.
why
Yeah.
why can't I just be like, okay, I upload the video and I walk away like just like I do RSS? Like what's stopping me? That would be interesting to know.
Okay.
So let's
Yeah.
let's end the thing here and we'll come back in about 10. I'll let you know how long it's
Okay.
gonna take. I'll see you in Discord.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Being a weirdo. He's just sitting at the door.
My cat knocks on the door every time I close it. So as soon as I close the door within
That's adorable.
mm-hmm.
That's funny. I think it's worth calling out how funny and stupid the Zoom dance we just did is, like in reference to everything we're talking about. We're not their target customer. Not really. Not in a way
mm-hmm.
that like we're gonna make them, if they're following the Pareto 80/20 principle,
What's that?
they're not, fun thing to learn. Like most things fall into an 80/20 distribution where like 20% of your customers will give you 80% of your revenue, and
Okay.
80%, the other 80% that isn't giving you most of your revenue is giving you most of your problems.
No.
Uh,
Okay.
so there's just this like, especially in tech, I think other industries, observe this too. I think it's like one of those, like Zipf's law is another thing. It's just like this mathematical phenomenon that happens everywhere. So lots of SaaS companies try to focus on the 20% that's giving them most of their revenue.
And SaaS is software as a service, right?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
So much jargon that's just like,
well, that's the hard part.
Everybody knows these ones.
Well, yeah, I think everybody in your industry kind of knows that it's working. But for people like me or like that are interested in this, but coming in from another, I have a whole other jargon in my line of work that I have to know. Right, it's a different language, right? So even something as I hear SaaS get tossed around a lot, but like oftentimes I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. So any service you pay reoccurring for mostly is a SaaS. And Adobe, everybody's favorite company, kind of pioneered. Yeah, and that's funny. Like we talked about this, but I think a good way to talk to artists about how fucked tech is just saying it's Adobe all the way down. Everything is Adobe. They, you know, I was listening to there's the streamer Northernline. He's like a game streamer, and he was talking about he got messaged by his like Twitch representative, and they're like, "Hey, we have to redo distribution amounts because bandwidth is so expensive." Twitch is owned by Amazon, which is who provides their bandwidth.
So they're charging themselves money?
Yeah, charging themselves too much to pay creators.
Is AWS,
so,
is that Amazon's primary revenue stream? Like that whole conglomerate? Yeah, by essentially just owning the back end for all of the internet.
Yeah, literally, basically everything you use is probably AWS. There's other cloud hosts. Google does it too, and so does Microsoft. Microsoft's is called Azure, and Google's is Google Cloud Platform. But more or less, those are used by like less public-facing companies. The average consumer, everything they touch is Amazon.
And so just give me a brief breakdown of what AWS is and how it works.
It's a good question.
Like, why do we even need it?
Yeah. So, man, I want to try to answer this in the simplest way possible, which is going to be tricky. But so, if you're a developer, the easiest way to explain Amazon is to explain like what AWS is to explain like what happened before. Before, if you were a big internet company, you had U-Haul even still works this way to some extent. They have like a warehouse in Georgia or something that's just a room full of computers, and it processes all the requests that they get over the internet. And most companies had to have a big room of computers if you were a certain size. And if you were smaller than that, you would have to go to some company and rent their computers. These warehouses would often be bigger than they have to be, and you would rent space in the warehouse, and then you would ship them your computer, and you'd be like, just put this in your warehouse, please.
Okay.
So obviously that sucks. Like, that's a weird way to do it. And then cloud computing became a concept, and you started to be able to, these places were like, instead of having you ship the computers to us, we'll just buy more computers, and you can buy space on those computers. Maybe you don't even need a whole server yourself. Maybe I can run 10 small websites on this single server and rent out portions of the server.
And you need that because like every time you click anything or do anything on the internet, it has to get processed through some computer somewhere, right?
Yeah. Basically, your computer sends something through a long chain, like it goes to your internet service provider, and then they do a lookup and they figure out what computer to talk to, where in the world. And then they say, hey, this person clicked the post link. Here's their ID. Like here's who did it and what they clicked. And then something is processed on the back end, and then it's sent back to you.
Got it.
And you can actually run, ISPs will hate this and they'll try and stop you, but you can run a server from your house. You can Hillary Clinton it. Anyone can do that.
I learned about the concept of having a server in your home from Hillary Clinton's email scandal.
I assume so. So yeah,
that should be its own episode where I want to learn what that is and why it's.
We should.
Issue. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
To be continued.
Yeah, too long didn't read on that is it's an issue because what should have been in the hands of the government was in the hands of her.
Hmm.
But I mean, I, I'm like it's weird because you know how I feel politically, but I do
Yeah.
like that was a major fucking faux pas. Like a lot of people in tech were like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Because it was in her bathroom too, from what I understand, which is super weird. Uh, but anyway,
Let's do the email.
I don't know.
Let's do the email server episode.
Yeah, yeah. We'll do that for sure. But you can do that. You can host. I could put a server in my bathroom and yeah, usually your ISP will figure that out because you'll have incoming traffic and they're like, how
Hmm.
the hell is like, they want to see you have outgoing traffic. And there's ways to even trick them around that and stuff. But the point is, this is all just computers running places, and you could do it yourself. But that's a huge pain in the ass, and it's much more reasonable, especially the smaller you are, to just have some computer company figure out the computer parts, and I'll just give you my code and run that on whatever computer is best for it. Like, it, any industry is like this. There's going to be layers of abstraction around stuff, right? So, like you don't know the nitty gritty of like probably how a CMOS sensor on a camera works.
Hmm.
You trust the camera companies to figure that out.
Yeah.
And
I think it's different with the internet though, because I think more and more we recognize the internet as critical infrastructure. Like I don't know
yeah,
how to. I use CMOS camera, but I don't know how. Like I don't know the details of how those little wires fit together on the circuit board and what those
right.
little things do. But I do have to drive on the roads and know how roads work. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
true.
that's more similar to what the internet is.
I agree in a lot of ways. Yeah, or like it's interesting though you say that, but like you probably don't know how the plumbing in your house works still, and
I got a
that's a similar.
better idea than the CMOS sensor circuit board.
That's true. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah. You've
don't have to.
probably unplugged the sink in your
Yeah, I
day
don't.
or something.
My CMOS sensor doesn't flood, and I have to repair it in emergency.
Yeah, and I do think people should learn more. But more what I was getting at is like at my layer, I write software, right? So I don't want to have to care about like what specs should my server have, like what type
Mhm.
of how much RAM should it have, what type of processor, whatever. I'm not a hardware guy. I probably sound like an idiot right now, but so it's nice that things like AWS came out because I can just say, here's my code, run that however you think it should be run. And then what AWS did, so we covered like the move to cloud computing, and they had this thing called EC2. But what really blew up is they were like, what if instead of renting portions of servers, what if instead of doing any of that, you hand over the code and it's just a single function, and your app a function is just like anything that does something like a
Any click.
yeah, yeah. Fuck. You don't need to understand a function, but basically it's a part of an app. It's like, you tie a bunch of functions together, and they like one function creates the user, one sends the email, one
Oh, I see.
does something else, and
It's kind of like a
together
it's kind of like a function on a spreadsheet.
it's exactly like a function on a spreadsheet. Yeah,
Got it.
except more open-ended.
Sure.
It could do anything. It could transcode video or whatever.
Hmm.
But they figured out a way to say like, forget bundling your whole app, make your whole app independent functions that can work together, and then just hand us those functions to run, and we'll figure everything out. We'll figure out like basically where it needs to run in the world to be closest to people, the version of node, the hardware, everything. Like just write your code and give it to us and we'll run it. That's referred to as serverless. That's what made Amazon huge. Is like it
There's
really
people in
removed.
is there's people in house that are like acting as another part of what would have been your team before. Is that what you're saying with AWS? Because it sounds like
Yeah,
you're building something on your end with code, but then they're saying like let me handle a bunch of this other stuff that maybe that would have been
exactly.
a partner you had in the past or another.
It would have been,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
It would have
okay.
been. They called them DevOps guys, developer operations.
So so Amazon Web Service became like a big developer operations service
Yes,
essentially.
yes.
Interesting.
Uh,
So
and even on their end, because they switched from EC2 traditional servers to serverless, they even cut out a lot of their internal DevOps. So like they took over the job, and then they optimize the job to be able to get rid of a lot of their own people even.
Okay, great.
Yeah, which is obviously bad, but you could argue, and you can make a compelling argument that serverless is good, and it's better for the world for a lot of reasons, because like code's hard to write, and sometimes you write code that's in a long running server. The thing about these serverless functions is they spin up, they run the code, and then they shut down. So you can't have things that used to be issues that plagued a lot of your time, like a memory leak. A memory leak is something that is really only a problem in a server that runs for a long time.
Hmm.
And a memory leak basically just means your code is like keeping too many things in its memory that it should have cleaned up. And eventually that can get so big that your server runs out of memory and crashes. So yeah, there's this whole, this is kind of, we've gone on a tangent about AWS here, but
This is bonus.
to
This is bonus
understand
content.
why they took over the, yeah. To understand why they took over the world, basically, they were really early on in leading the move to cloud so that you could just rent computers, and then they optimized that in a way that made entire departments redundant. And you know, companies love that. So
they're a cost cutting measure for everybody, basically.
yeah, but here's the interesting thing. We've been in the serverless revolution long enough to look at the numbers, and it didn't cut any costs. It just moved all your costs to Amazon, and now they're more profitable than ever. So it's kind of a big con. But yeah, what made you ask about AWS?
I forget. I think you just mentioned it, and I was just curious.
Yeah,
but we can circle back. We should definitely clip that though, because that was really interesting conversation. Maybe that's just like a little piece of bonus content. Like, what is AWS?
so,
and you ended on a nice note of it, like it being a big con that you can just transfer, just transfer all the labor, like transfer all the costs from you paying like a person on your team to you paying a conglomerate.
Well, yeah, and you know, we should add. I should say one more point too, if we're gonna cut this all together. Part of the reason I feel like it's a con is because small companies have been very convinced that, like, startups especially, they're like, you need to move fast, so don't worry about all that infrastructure shit. Go with serverless. Here's what I'm realizing though, making Double Zero. I picked technologies that are not serverless. I just picked technologies that are reliable on a server. And then I very fiercely picked the simplest solution for everything. So like, for instance, the database I use is SQLite, which is literally just a file on the computer. Most databases are like a separate server, and then you communicate over HTTP, which is what everything communicates over for the web. And when you just fiercely reject a lot of the modern stuff and you go with the more simple solution, it's cheaper and easier and faster to develop. So that's part of the reason that I feel so strongly about it being a con. There are certain situations where serverless absolutely makes more sense. Video transcoding is like one of them. If you want to, like, you know, you upload a 4K video file, but someone requests it on their phone, so you don't want to send the 4K file to their phone. So you like transcode it to a smaller file size and send it. Stuff like that's great over serverless because you don't know how many people are going to request the video at once, right? Like maybe it goes viral and 1 million people request it. It's nice to just spin up 1 million functions that do the transcoding. But most people never hit that scale in the first place. So optimizing for that in the beginning in this more complicated system is like, it's just kind of crazy to do. When there's like simple ways to just build an app and put it out there, and you're paying like $5 a month, and if literally Beyonce doesn't tweet about it, you're probably good. Yeah, it's just weird. So let's circle back on, you asked some questions in the break that I think were really insightful.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you what I think RSS is, and I want you to tell me if I'm right, and if I'm not, tell me where I'm wrong.
Okay. And for the tech nerds listening, I might say you're right if your understanding is good enough for you.
Thank you.
You know?
Yeah. So again, I'm not from this industry. I don't plan on being in this industry at your level.
Yeah.
But I do want a better understanding of how this stuff works. I just feel like it's so integral to how we live our lives that,
yeah,
you know, it's important. You got to, like, just like, you know, you need to know how the roads work. You got to know how a little bit how all of the internet infrastructure works. It being a mystery actually leaves us open to being scammed, and being nickel and dime to death by these different like SaaS companies and things like that. So what I understand RSS to be, uh, or an RSS host, is a place where you say if I had a podcast, I would upload my podcast episode at my MP4 or whatever to the RSS host. And from there, that's like a almost like a broadcast hub where your primary
Yep.
file, your primary episode lives there, and then all these, and then it's broadcasts out to all these other, depending on how you think about it, you're broadcasts out to these other podcast platforms, or these podcast platforms are like tapping into your broadcast hub.
Mhm.
And then you can listen, you're listening to the podcast as a listener through these different platforms, but it's all hosted on whatever RSS service that you choose, whether it's something you own personally or
Yes.
it's like a service you pay for or whatever.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
exactly. That's
Nice.
dead on. And
Yes.
that explains there's something weird that happens with podcasts that people don't understand. And once you understand what you just said, it makes more sense. Sometimes you'll be on iTunes and you'll go to listen to your favorite podcast and it's like error, can't download the episode. And you're like, oh, iTunes is broken. So you go to another one and it downloads fine.
Hmm.
That's because they had different hosts. They're pulling the file from totally different places. And someone's podcast host might have gone down, but iTunes is fine. Um,
Does
and
that
that's
does that mean the person uploaded it to multiple RSS feeds or RSS hosts? I mean, like is that a
you
user
could do
error?
that. Yeah, it could be. But I more meant like you try to download an episode of like This American Life and it doesn't work. So then you go to the Joe Rogan podcast and that works
Oh,
because
I see what
those
you're
are
saying.
on different hosts.
Gotcha,
You know,
gotcha.
where like YouTube, when you go to watch a YouTube video and it doesn't work, typically you'll go to watch another YouTube video and it won't work because
Yeah,
something's wrong with YouTube.
gotcha. Well,
Uh,
that's a good point. Because I want to ask this next. So if I can upload a podcast episode to RSS host and that gets distributed to all these different platforms where people can listen, right, depending on their platform of choice, why can't I do that with video as a video creator? I have to upload to all these individual platforms and they host it, but I can't just upload
right.
it to one place and it gets distributed to all the different platforms.
Yeah. It's a great question.
Can I do that? I don't know if I can.
You can't right now, but it's by choice of the platform. Like the platforms were just not designed in a way to support that, and they could have been. And like tech people, if I don't explain this, some tech people in the comments might be mad. But like, so there are tricky things about video that would make it harder than doing a podcast this way. Mostly file size. Audio files are much smaller than video files.
By a
So
lot.
when you're on a train and you want to download a podcast, it's much easier to get that file onto your device. There's also a concept like most podcasts don't really stream the audio. You download the whole episode and then you listen to it. The bigger ones, I think iTunes and Spotify let you stream it, but a lot of the smaller clients will want you to download the whole episode. That's not really feasible with video, especially if you're watching like a 3-hour video. You want to stream that. So there's this technical limitation, which is it's better to stream video, which will make it trickier. But it's not impossible. And one of the reasons I'm confident it's not impossible is Plex, which I've mentioned to you a couple times, has kind of proven, and it sucks. Plex is so interesting. So Plex is a media server. You can upload your videos, you can upload movies that you own, legally own. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
You can upload whatever. And basically it's a server that you can pay Plex monthly for, or you can host it in your bathroom. And essentially, like I was trying to explain it to my wife to make sure I could explain it to you. There's two things most people will say they like about Netflix, and it's they have a huge range of content for you to choose from, and it's really convenient to click a button and then it opens up a whole library, and you click another button and you're playing a movie instantly. And before, even if you owned media digitally, it was like files in your computer, and you'd like, you'd open a folder and you'd browse through a bunch of like tiny thumbnails in your normal file browser. That's the same thing you'll find a Word document in. And that's a lot less enjoyable than the UI that Netflix gives you, right? early on, we kind of traded actual ownership because we could have owned these movies. You can buy them and download them. That was a thing before Netflix was. But that experience wasn't as good. So we traded for that convenience. Plex is a way of thinking like, what if you uploaded your stuff instead of just keeping it on your computer, you uploaded it to this server that's specialized in showing you media, and now it has a UI just like Netflix. And that's very nice, obviously. But what's interesting, what's the real like crux of what makes Plex so interesting is you download the Plex app on your side, and then you can download the Plex server separately. And then in Plex, just like with an RSS feed, you paste the URL and you say, here's where my Plex server is. Pull all the
Okay.
content from it.
Yeah, when you say
Um,
download a Plex server, I thought
yeah.
servers with this had to be so big they were in your bathroom.
Yeah, you would want to download it to put it in your bathroom. But no,
Okay.
that's actually that's all just a joke. A server, like really powerful servers, are smaller than home computers sometimes.
Oh,
They're
okay.
just
I guess the image in my mind is like these big server rooms with just wires and
right.
blinking lights everywhere.
Yeah, and those exist because like Amazon needs that because it's running all of Amazon and it's running all of everybody else's shit. So their server rooms are, tower after tower, endless fluorescent light tunnels of blinking lights. Yeah. But a lot of people host their own Plex server on like an IBM machine that's like a VCR. It
Okay.
like same size and dimensions as an old school VCR.
Okay. So it's not inconceivable
Um,
that Hillary Clinton had her server on the back of her toilet.
yeah, yeah, I think she did, man, which is crazy. um, but yeah, so and when I say download a Plex server, I literally just mean you're downloading code, like the same way you used to download Photoshop or something. And you just you can log into a server. It's typically done through SSH, which is like the command line, but you can put a user interface on a server and download stuff the way you'd be used to and double click it and then it runs. And yeah, so back to Plex though. So you can paste in, you've downloaded the server, you've got it running somewhere, or you've paid Plex to use theirs. You can do that too. And then they give you a URL, or you've made your own, and you open up the client app and you say, here's the server, and it pulls all the data from it, which is almost essentially the same as RSS. And Plex, it's free to do this too, which is crazy.
So as a content creator, right? Are you saying that I could have essentially my own YouTube, essentially my own YouTube, right? Are you saying like I could like
Yeah,
here's my Plex link, you can go see all my work,
right. Yes, you
and it
could.
has an
Plex isn't
interface of some
really,
kind.
yeah, yeah. Plex isn't built with you in mind. So it would be
Bastards.
weird to do. Yeah. It's really made for the people who are like nostalgic of owning CD racks or DVD racks.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, I think that's more of Plex's target market. A bunch of people who want to own movies, or honestly, like to be fully transparent, want to pirate movies and then be able to watch them well.
Hell yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. So but yeah, like if a friend of yours has a Plex server and you have a Plex server, you open Plex, you put both the URLs in, and it shows you all the content mixed together. And you can filter by the name of the server or whatever. And yeah, so I was touching on, it's not really built for you to share like short form content. It's built for you to share movies like that. But there's nothing stopping anybody else from making Plex but for YouTube, Plex but
Hmm.
for social short form content.
Okay.
Um,
Except for the
and
skill
Plex,
to make a UI, right? Essentially, that's all you
right,
really
right,
need.
yeah.
Okay.
It just takes someone, yeah, with my skills essentially
Yeah.
to want to do this bad enough.
And UI is
And
user
it sucks.
interface.
Yeah, for everyone out there, which is it's funny. I did
Remember, you're talking to a dummy here, so I gotta throw in the kindergarten
yeah,
questions for you.
yeah. But yeah, I did UIs for like the past 10 years and now I'm just getting into like deeper into like server knowledge. But it's interesting because there is two parts of it. There, you care about the UI, right? But I've mentioned it a couple times. You have to do stuff like video transcoding, because yeah, you can't be on a train watching a 4K video on your phone.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be too much bandwidth. So the the video server typically gets the request and can tell what type of device it is and then serves it in the best format. And Plex takes care of you on that. That's what the Plex server does. That's why custom software by people that really know what they're doing needs to be made. And that's the barrier to entry that money essentially gates, right? And this is something I think I touched on it, but I don't think the general public knows. Like, part of the reason Google has these fun break rooms that you can just hang out in and do nothing all day is because Google and every other video platform scours the internet for anyone that knows how to do video transcoding, and they'll hire them to do nothing. They've already got it all figured out. They don't need another guy doing video transcoding, so
They just
they'll
need you
hire
off
you
the.
because they have a skill set
They
they
just
don't
need
want on
you.
the market.
Yeah, they just need you off the market. They need you unavailable for everybody
Yeah,
else, for the
and they need you to
competitors.
sign a contract that says I'll never make a
Exclusive.
video competitor. Yeah,
Wow. Which California I think just passed laws that says this. It's illegal to do non-compete
right. It's very exciting times
contracts.
because
Yeah.
that happened, and they just fired all the people they hired to keep off the market. Essentially
Oh,
thinking,
they screwed themselves.
right,
Good,
yeah,
good. So I say if I could build my own RSS but for video,
yeah,
what's the benefit for me as a content creator, say, to have my own RSS where I can upload video content to and it can be hosted and I can have more control over that versus just going to YouTube or just going to Twitter. And I can see
yeah,
the first thing would be like I don't have to deal with these fucking websites and these jerks that run them. I could just go directly
right.
to my audience. So that one's apparent to me. But from your perspective, what do you see as like a benefit?
Great question. I think the main thing, a lot of people don't realize, like, if you really think about how much you've given up ownership wise to be on these platforms, you'll start to really uh, be surprised by what we've just accepted. You can't run a formal commercial in the video or in the middle of a YouTube video. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but you can do like sponsored slots and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't be like trying on a shirt and like run a real commercial that's like, here, place this in the middle of here's like a Super Bowl ad we've made, place it in the middle of your video. And the reason you can't do that is because YouTube does that, and they don't want you to compete with them.
But
They want to put the ad in the middle of your video.
doesn't Mr. Beast do that though? He puts like a credit card ad right in the middle of his content. So he'll be in
So
a cave somewhere and he'll be like, "Man, this cave is dark. I'm glad I bought a flashlight with my Visa, whatever." And it'll be like a 30
yeah,
second ad that he just builds into the content.
it's slightly different. So he's doing an
Okay.
endorsement. He himself is endorsing a product, which they still make a cutout to let you do.
Okay.
But Visa couldn't be like, here, we've made a professional ad. It's got actors. You're not in it. Play it in the middle of your video.
Okay.
And here's the thing, YouTube still does that. Your video still has those ad spots that are professionally cut videos. It's just YouTube owns the right to do that exclusively and doesn't allow you to.
Yeah, they pause your
And they
video.
can be like, yeah, exactly. And real pausing, they can't skip.
Yeah.
If it was just in your video, your users could skip it if they wanted.
Mhm.
So that's just one of the many ways that it's clear to me that you don't actually own the content. Like, YouTube has rules about your content that you're giving them for free that they're making money off of. And then there's, aside from like, I want the right to run my own ads, there's also like, YouTube at any day, at any time, can just demonetize your channel. They can be like, you know what, I don't think you can keep giving us free content. We're just going to stop giving you the money back.
Every creator I know has had videos that monetize their video content, including me, has had videos demonetized. And with my particular experience, my video was doing well, and it was demonetized at the peak of when it was getting the most viewership. And then I did an appeal, and YouTube got back to it, and they remonetized after the peak had
It's too
passed.
late. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't make the
Yeah.
revenue, but like I still provided value to these companies by people like being like, oh my God, I got to see this video. Because first it went viral on like Twitter, and then it went viral on
Right.
Reddit, and then another creator on YouTube did a segment about it on their show. And
Hmm.
so all these eyes are suddenly coming from these different platforms and places to my channel. And then right at the peak when I could have benefited from that, they turned off the hose. But
Hmm.
YouTube still gets the value from that because I brought the value to the channel from these other
Right.
platforms by making it go viral other
Right.
places. And it brought all the eyeballs back home to where the main video lived, which is YouTube. So YouTube's still like
Right.
they're collecting, there's some value that I don't know what it is, but how much is a million views worth? I don't know. And there's some
Yeah.
number that YouTube knows that answer. And
Right. Right.
and if it's not a direct value from advertising, it's a value from like from advertisers, but it's a value from like their brand value and their
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Which tech people are very, like you can look up all sorts of things. They'll run ads just for brand awareness that they'll know never are going to convert, just so people will talk about it. So, like you said, like YouTube knows there's value in that. They know they can probably put a number on it.
yeah, it'd be crazy if I couldn't.
They probably, huh?
It'd be crazy if they didn't know the value of that.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
model. Yeah, they're a business. They're not just like
Yeah.
they're not a charity.
But just to like wrap up what I'm saying there, and
Yeah.
we'll cover probably more of this in future episodes. A lot of the barriers are big tech is hiring these people to take them away from working on passion projects. There are some like complicated problems to solve about getting video into the hands of people as fast as possible in a way that we've become used to that these billion-dollar corporations have figured out how to do. Um, Another limitation you'd run into right away is like when you host a podcast, you pay a podcast host because that's how they're going to make money because they can't force ads into it and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we've become accustomed to trading stuff for free. Like you just upload to YouTube for free. They give you storage in exchange for exploitation, essentially.
Yeah, we're made to feel like they're doing us a favor because our ease of upload is easy. So it's
right.
like you can reach your audience so quickly, and you can we'll put you in the
Yeah.
algorithm and stuff like that. That's supposed to be considered our payment.
Yeah.
And but really we're like volunteer employees for these companies because like
Right.
often like if you want to be a content creator, that's what you're doing. You're basically working for YouTube or you're working for TikTok.
Right.
They're just keeping all of the value.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have a
And I
minimum
think
wage in this industry.
right. The shiny free stuff got everyone distracted for a while, but I think you can see now if you truly owned your content, paying $50 a month to a host is nothing. If you were actually able to monetize your videos and not get demonetized randomly, and you could pick what types of ads serve before your videos, or you could negotiate your own mid rolls. I think you, for instance, would make a lot more than $50 a month. So it's an easy trade off to.
Oh man, I wish I made $50 a month. I've been doing this for like 4 years. I think I've made maybe $800 in
Wow,
four
really?
years for like
And that's
videos with like
insane. Like,
my one of my latest videos had 15 million views. I think I made 30 or $40 from YouTube on that one.
and how's that? I'm assuming they run ads on your stuff.
It's a short, so they have like a special. They have a
Okay.
special fund for that, but it's all made up anyway. It's fucking it's Google. It's all made up.
Yeah.
They have infinite money cheat code. But we should wrap up because we have less than a minute left.
Okay.
So I think this is great, man. I thank you. I'm understanding RSS better.